DVB, Digital Fast.
Hello and welcome to the DVB Newsroom. I'm Nora. Joining me today is Tom Andrews, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar. Thank you for being here, Tom.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Min Aung lifted the state of emergency that has been in place since the military coup on February 1st, 2021. He now claims to lead an interim administration that will hand over power to an elected government following the elections. What do you think about that?
Well, it's absurd, number one. This is all window dressing. He's trying to accommodate the Constitution. He's lifted the state of emergency, which means that the clock is set on when the elections will be, so-called elections will be held, which he's claiming will be December or January. He appoints himself to be the leader of this new administration. Listen, it is completely absurd. You cannot have an election when you arrest, detain, torture, execute political leaders, when it is against the law to post on social media opposition to the military junta, when it is a capital offense. They announced just the other day that those who are opposing the election could face the death penalty, when it is illegal for journalists to report the truth. So this is completely absurd. And from a practical point of view, even the junta itself has admitted that they've only been able to, in their bogus census, count roughly half the population of Myanmar. So just from a practical point of view, how do you possibly administer an election when you can't even count more than half the population of Myanmar? So from any and every perspective, this so-called election is a fraud. It is an attempt to, in my opinion, dupe the international community into accepting the junta as legitimate. I don't think it's going to work. There have already been expressions of concern and opposition from various sectors internationally. The Secretary General himself has warned about possible violence with respect to these elections. Members of ASEAN have expressed their concern and their priority for stability over these elections. Many have expressed their concern about the possibility of further violence, that this could be a step backward. So from the point of view of legitimacy, the point of view of practicality, and the point of view of security, this election scheme is absurd.
How will the international community respond to the results of an election held under the military that has imprisoned State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint, along with 22,000 other political prisoners?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right. Opposition leaders, including Aung San Suu Kyi, have continued to be detained and arrested, over 22,000, as you mentioned. Scores of political parties have been deemed illegal. It's a good question. And I think what is important for the international community right now is to understand what this is and what this is not. This is a fraudulent attempt to seek legitimacy in the international community. What it is not is a legitimate election. It's going to be up to the international community, members of the international community, to make their decision as to how they approach this election. It seems to me that those who want to somehow turn the page, as it were, on this crisis and find an excuse to begin dealing with the junta may just avert their eyes and say, well, whatever, we will just simply accept whatever the result is of this exercise. But my hope is that most countries will not, that they will refuse at least to recognize this as a legitimate election and refuse to recognize as legitimate any entity that emerges from this election, any so-called government that emerges from this election. My job is to inform them of the facts and the truth, and to urge them to not accept this election as legitimate. But obviously, it is up to them.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told American diplomats that they should no longer comment on the fairness of elections abroad. Does this mean an election in Myanmar without the National League for Democracy Party may not be labeled by the U.S. as neither fair nor free?
Well, that remains to be seen. The Secretary has put out a directive that tells members of the State Department, people in countries around the world, to only opine on elections upon securing the agreement and approval of those higher ups. In other words, it was a cable warning diplomats and others representing the United States to be cautious when opining on an election. I'm hopeful, particularly given the very strong support in the United States Congress for democracy and for the people of Myanmar, that the United States will ultimately speak the truth about this election. But again, I can only say that my job will continue. I will continue to engage in all member states of the United Nations, including the United States. And I certainly will be encouraging the administration, that is the Trump administration and Secretary Rubio, to speak the truth about this election.
U.S. sanctions against 3 Myanmar companies and 4 military-linked businessmen have been removed by Washington. What does this mean? As I know, you've called for more sanctions against those who help procure weapons for the military.
Well, frankly, this is unconscionable. This action is unconscionable for a couple of reasons. One, these very sophisticated weapons of war that are being obtained from abroad are being used to kill innocent people. We're talking war crimes, crimes against humanity, the assault, the assassination, the murder of untold numbers, thousands of people. And it continues. We know just over the weekend, innocent people were killed, children were killed. Mosques are being attacked, IDP centers are being attacked, schools are being attacked. This is completely outrageous. And so what we need to do is support the people of Myanmar by undermining the ability of the junta to obtain these sophisticated weapons of war. Now, the good news is that sanctions work. Since I've issued my report on the weapons of war that the junta has obtained and identified those that are responsible for the transfer of these weapons and urged sanctions to be placed on them, there has been a significant reduction in the junta's access to these military weapons of war, 30% reduction just last year. So we know that these sanctions work. We know that the United States has played a very important role in these sanctions. We know that we're talking about life and death here, the lives of innocent people. So why do you lift sanctions when you know that they're working and you know that the military junta continues to attack innocent people with these weapons of war? I think this is, frankly, it is outrageous. It's unconscionable. It is a step clearly in the wrong direction. And I'm urging the United States and I'm urging all member states to go in precisely the opposite direction, to increase and strengthen sanctions, particularly on the financial institutions that we know, Myanmar Economic Bank principally, that we know are the junta's institution that is largely facilitating the financing of the transfer of these weapons and these deals that are sending these weapons of war into the hands of the military junta. So it's outrageous, it is unconscionable, and it is a step in the wrong direction. We need to be going in precisely the opposite direction because the people of Myanmar deserve an international community that stands with them and not against them.
How could international sanctions be more effective and more targeted against the regime in Naypyidaw?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we need to be targeting those institutions that we know are playing the largest role in these transactions that are enabling the junta to obtain these weapons. Myanmar Economic Bank is a principal target. I think that should be something that all member states target in terms of economic sanctions. It would go a big step. It would take a big step toward dealing with this horrible problem. But I think what's really also important is that these sanctions be coordinated. Right now, you have a number of different sanctions being applied by different countries. And they lack the coordination and the focus that I think is required to be truly effective. I've urged member states to convene a session in which all of these targets for sanctions are put on the table. There's a full discussion as to the priorities, as to what those targets should be, and that there's a working agreement between these countries to coordinate not only the identification of these targets, but also the enforcement of sanctions. And that's a very important piece of this. Sanctions that are not enforced are not sanctions. We need to enforce them. We need to coordinate the enforcement mechanisms that exist in most countries, and we need to make them as effective as possible. So all of these steps are important, I believe, in making sanctions work. And it's really important that we understand the link between sanctions and human lives, innocent human lives. And that has to be first and foremost in all considerations about sanctions.
The long-awaited cybersecurity law has now been enforced. How do you see this limiting freedom of expression and access to information?
Well, it's just a part and parcel of the way the junta operates. This is all based upon their fear, their insecurity of the truth. They want to deny. I mean, I've sometimes will describe the junta to those in the international community as mushrooms. They thrive in the dark. They want to be sure that free expression is halted because those expressions are so often expressions against the military junta, expressions of opposition, reporting of the truth of the impact that this junta is having on the people of Myanmar. So they will do anything and everything to halt the free and open expression of ideas, the access that people have to the truth. And we as an international community have to be responding accordingly, at least by exposing this and exposing the truth behind these actions.
Earlier this year, you addressed the UN about the US funding cuts having a crushing impact on Myanmar. How has this reduction in aid impacted human rights work on the ground?
Profoundly. And we're still gathering information. And in a forthcoming report, we'll be talking more about the impact of these cuts. But here's the tragedy here is this. The United States announces these significant cuts just at a time when humanitarian aid is needed the most. So you have the reduction of sanctions, you have the increased attacks on people of Myanmar. So therefore you have an increased desperate need for humanitarian aid. And now you're going to respond by decimating access to humanitarian aid. Now, I went to the council, the Human Rights Council, a couple of months ago, and I said, look, the United States has made its reductions. They're very significant because the United States was the single largest source of humanitarian aid. The international community has to step up. I was saying that at precisely the time that NATO was having a meeting in the Netherlands in which governments were announcing their increases in military spending. The very countries who have come forward to reduce even further their commitment to humanitarian aid. So in other words, instead of filling in the gaps created by the reduction in humanitarian aid by the United States, many countries have been actually decreasing their commitment to humanitarian aid, significant reductions. At the same time, they're increasing military spending. This is a very, very dangerous and tragic trajectory where you reduce support for human lives while simultaneously investing in armaments that take human lives. We need to speak truth to power. We need to, in countries all around the world, citizens who care about human rights need to be petitioning their governments to reduce this tragic trajectory. My job is to provide people around the world with the facts, the information that they need to do so. And I'm hoping that those who support human rights are going to be stepping forward to point out this very dangerous trajectory.
Your report, Banking on the Debt Trade, examined how banks in countries like Singapore and Thailand are used to evade sanctions. Have both Singapore and Bangkok worked with you in addressing this?
Yes. Singapore certainly conducted a very extensive investigation. And the result of that investigation was a 90% reduction in weapons being transferred through Singapore. Thailand has, I spoke to Thai banking officials. I had engaged in a public hearing in the Thai parliament. There has been investigative work that has been going on in Thailand. We know that some banks have significantly reduced, that is Thai banks, have significantly reduced their role in the transfer of weapons. I think that more can be done. I'm hoping that more can be done, but I'm very gratified that we have seen important steps in the right direction, and I'm hoping that those steps are going to continue.
You have a forthcoming report. What can you share about this?
Well, we're going to be doing, first of all, I'm going to be releasing a report on the impact of the military coup in Myanmar on the disability community. We've been doing extensive interviews and engagement with those who have disabilities, those who work with people with disabilities. We've been meeting with people and speaking with people inside Myanmar and those who were forced to leave Myanmar. So I'll be releasing a comprehensive report on the impact of the coup on persons with disabilities and what we as an international community can do to support those members of the disability community in Myanmar. And that'll be coming up I'm hoping we'll be releasing that in early October. Then I'll be releasing my next comprehensive report on the situation of human rights in Myanmar in October, late October, and I'll be presenting that to the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
The 80th UN General Assembly will meet in September. Do you plan on addressing it about what's happening in Myanmar?
Absolutely. I will be making a presentation to the General Assembly. I'll be, first of all, issuing a written report, a comprehensive report on the situation of human rights in Myanmar. And then I will be making an oral presentation in New York, and I'll be underscoring the points in my report. But then I'll be spending much of my time at the podium urging action by the international community. And frankly, I'm going to be describing this tragic trajectory that we're in the midst of right now. I think it's important for all of us to recognize that there are forces of nativism, of xenophobia, of fear, of scapegoating that's going on all around the world, in nations around the world. These political forces are very, very active. And I think that the response by the international community to reduce humanitarian aid while increasing military spending is a reflection of these political forces. And so I'm going to be recommending that governments, leadership, members of the international community with principle stand up to these forces. We know where this all leads. The United Nations was created on the ashes of an international catastrophe that resulted in these forces that took hold and created incredible suffering on the planet. That is the reason that we created a United Nations. That's why we created a Declaration of Human Rights. It's why we established basic principles. So those principles are under attack. And I think it's extremely important for all of us, wherever we are, whoever we are, to be standing up for justice, for human rights, for democracy, and that we work hard to counter these forces so that governments can do the right thing and be able to do well at home politically at the same time.
You have served as a UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar since 2020. Is there anything you would like to say to the people of Myanmar?
I will be the Special Rapporteur through the end of April of next year. So I have a lot of work to do as a Special Rapporteur. I'm certainly going to be continuing my work as an advocate for human rights and for the people of Myanmar. In my capacity, I'm a fellow now at the Asia Center at Harvard University, and I'm going to be continuing my work as a human rights advocate and as a supporter of the people of Myanmar in any and every way that I can. But that's going to happen next year. I'm still the UN Special Rapporteur and will be the Special Rapporteur through the spring of 2026.
Thank you for your service and for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.